This is the most controversial cheese on the internet. Some people say it looks and tastes like melted plastic, while other people say that this is the only cheese you ever need to use. This is American cheese, and today we're going to learn what is it, how to make it, and most importantly, should you put it on your grilled cheese sandwich. I know some of you are just here for the recipe, so we're going to get that out of the way first, and then I'm going to give you some tips and tricks on how to use this cheese and how you can even customize the recipe to make something like sliceable beer cheese. So if you're not in a hurry, I would recommend sticking around. Let's get into it with the recipe for a basic American cheese. American cheese is, in a way, pre-melted, watered down cheese. Yeah, that sounds appetizing, doesn't it? Look, it does taste good, but you're going to see what I'm talking about in a minute. I'm showing the ingredients on the screen now, but if you're looking for a more traditional written recipe, I also have that on my website. It's linked in the description of this video. If you're paying attention, then by now you're probably wondering, wait, this recipe for cheese starts with cheese? And the answer is yes. Like I said, it's pretty much just watered down cheese. So for my starting cheese, I'm using 1 pound of cheddar. The one I have has been aged for 18 months, and that's important to me because the aging process allows the cheese to break down the lactose in it, so it's naturally lactose free, and I'm lactose intolerant. I also use a little bit of Gruyere in my recipe, and that's because Gruyere is a Swiss cheese, and Swiss cheeses, in my experience, usually have really good cheese pulls, and I want that quality in our cheese. Gruyere can sometimes be kind of expensive though, so if you're trying to keep your costs down, feel free to just use cheddar. I promise it'll work out fine. Measure out 3/4 cup of whole milk. The one I'm using is lactose free, but you can use one with lactose if that's how you roll. Heat a small pot over a low heat and then add the milk to that. We don't want to bring the milk to a boil, we just want to heat it up. Start shredding the cheese, and as you shred it, you can actually add it to the pot. Adding your cheese in batches helps with the melting process and gives you a creamier final product. Now is also a good time to add the sodium citrate. Don't worry, it's not some kind of scary chemical, it's just a type of salt. Sodium citrate reduces the acidity of our cheese mixture, which makes the proteins more soluble. Basically, this is going to help the milk stick to the cheese and give us that perfectly creamy texture that American cheese is known for. I realize a lot of you probably don't have sodium citrate already, so I put an Amazon link in the video description. The cheese is fully melted and it's looking pretty good, but it's not orange. American cheese is normally orange. Sazon contains annatto seed, which is the ingredient that's usually used to dye cheeses orange. It also contains some other seasonings that taste amazing in the American cheese, so I like it. I forgot to film it, but now's a good time to season your cheese with salt. That's it, the cheese is ready. All you have to do is pour it into a mold, or you can even use a Tupperware container lined with some plastic wrap like I'm doing. Put this in the fridge overnight and you'll have a block of American cheese. But when you go to cut it, you might notice it's pretty hard to cut with a knife. That's because the knife has too large of a surface area and it's causing too much friction when you try to slide through the cheese, and it's just bringing the cheese with it. I recommend getting a cheese wire slicer like this. They're not very expensive. I think I got mine from TikTok Shop for like $10. Don't worry, if you're balling on a budget, you could actually use some clear fishing line or even some dental floss. I would just definitely recommend getting the unflavored kind. You're learning so much about grilled cheese sandwiches so fast that I think you should treat yourself to some grilled cheese merch. This black hoodie has definitely been a fan favorite, but if black's not your color or you're looking for something a little bit more low-key, I have a bunch of other stuff that I think you might like. Most of these designs come in a bunch of other colors too, so make sure you check out the website. I thought it would be fun to do a little bit of a melt test to compare our new American cheese to the plain cheddar cheese. Both cheeses melted at about the same time, but I have heard people say that American cheese will melt at a lower temperature, but this is not a good test for that. I do think it shows off how the American cheese almost melts into a sauce, while the cheddar kind of breaks into just cheese and oil. Don't worry, I'm not changing my name to Chef Ty the Science Guy anytime soon. I know it was a pretty bad experiment, so let's try a real experiment. Let's see how this tastes on a grilled cheese sandwich. If you watched my last YouTube video, you'd know that I've actually been using this American cheese for a while. I just really wanted to get the recipe dialed in before I shared it. Even though I'm usually making pretty elaborate grilled cheese sandwiches, don't get me wrong, I can appreciate a white bread and American cheese grilled cheese sandwich. Especially when the American cheese being used is this homemade lactose-free American cheese. You can't deny that this looks pretty good. Let's take a moment to address some of the recent allegations against me saying that I fake my cheese pulls. You guys seem to have forgotten that I'm the king of grilled cheese sandwiches, and not only can I do a cheese pull, but I can actually do multiple cheese pulls with the same grilled cheese sandwich over and over and over again. Just a minute ago, I was telling you about how sodium citrate is an important part of making American cheese because it helps the molecules bond together. And that's exactly the same reason we can have multiple cheese pulls over and over and over again. Once you cut your sandwich in half, all you have to do is touch one side of the cheese to the other and they will be bonded back together. You can see truly how easy it is to make cheese pulls with this cheese, but you can also see that the cheese pulls are not that long because the cheese is very gooey and does not have much structural integrity. And that's exactly the reason I'm not usually using only American cheese on my grilled cheese sandwiches. If you pair American cheese with something like Munster that has a more structured cheese pull, you'll be able to get the best qualities from both cheeses in your sandwich. Adding more cheeses can also enhance the flavor of your grilled cheese sandwich because American cheese on its own has a pretty mild flavor. Adding some cheeses like Parmesan or even a smoked Gouda will elevate your sandwich to the next level. Speaking of next level, let's take a look at this cheese pull. This cheese pull is both gooey and stretchy because we have both the American and Munster cheeses. So the lesson here is that if you want the best cheese pulls, make sure you use a little bit of American cheese and something else. It's time for a taste test, and sorry if I seem a little unenthusiastic, I did make this sandwich at 7 a.m. You guys are just gonna have to trust me on this one. This sandwich was fantastic. Actually wait, you don't have to trust me, you could just go make this cheese and make the sandwich yourself, and then you would know for sure that it was fantastic. This recipe for American cheese is great overall, and you don't need to make any changes, but you can. For example, if you swap the milk in the recipe for beer, you will make a sliceable beer cheese. I may regret saying this, but you could technically swap the liquid for any liquid. One thing you have to be careful about when you start swapping out the liquids is to make sure that the cheese is still thick enough. Remember that the melted cheese in the pot is the same consistency that the melted cheese on your sandwich will have. If it's too liquidy, the sandwich will get soggy and you'll just kind of have a wet cheese soup sandwich, which sounds disgusting. When I used beer instead of milk, I noticed that the sauce was a little bit thinner, so I actually ended up using about 2 pounds of cheese. If you're in the mood to do some experimenting with this recipe, I definitely encourage you to try using different spices or even different cheeses. I felt like this cheese needed a little bit more flavor, so I actually added some Dijon mustard and it was great. So the recipe you're seeing on screen now is what I ended up using for this beer cheese. If you do experiment with this recipe and you find something that you think is really good, please make sure to share it in the comments. I would love to see what you guys are experimenting with, and maybe I'll even try it. Of course, because I made this beer cheese, I have to make a grilled cheese sandwich to show you how to use it. Let's make a beer cheese and jalapeno grilled cheese sandwich. I think there's probably a million different ways you could use this beer cheese, but I was in the mood for pickled jalapenos, so this is what I went for. It's a pretty easy sandwich, but you could definitely do more. Some of you have been getting really creative and making some amazing grilled cheese sandwiches and then posting them on Instagram and tagging me, and I love it. Someone even commented on one of my posts recently saying that they and their friends have been doing Chef Tyler challenges where they each compete and make the best grilled cheese sandwich they can. I do have one problem with that though, and that is nobody invited me. I mean, come on, that sounds like so much fun. I would love to do that. Seriously though, if you're ever making a grilled cheese sandwich that's inspired by me, I would absolutely love to see it. I think that this clip's really funny because I put all the cheese on, and as I closed up the sandwich and was pressing it down, I remembered that I completely forgot to put jalapenos on this, which was like the whole point because I was craving jalapenos. I'm starting to think that eating grilled cheese sandwiches every day is bad for your brain. Whatever, it's not gonna stop me. All that matters is that the jalapenos did make it onto the sandwich and I finished cooking it, so we're ready for a cheese pull. Except now that you've watched this video, you'll know that this cheese pull is not gonna be that great because I only used American cheese and the sliceable beer cheese, which is also pretty much American cheese. I know I said this before, but sorry if I seem unenthusiastic, I also made this grilled cheese sandwich at 7 a.m. Yes, that does mean I woke up and started craving pickled jalapenos first thing in the morning. Don't question it. Like I said before, I fell down the stairs as a child. Let me be. And remember to order some merch.